Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In, by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton. Hello, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Imagine for a moment, two people sitting in a library. They're quarreling. One wants the window open, the other wants it shut. They argue back and forth about how much to leave it open. A tiny crack? Halfway? 3/4 of the way? No solution seems to satisfy them both. The air grows thick with frustration. Just then, the librarian walks in. She sees their deadlock. She doesn't ask them about their positions, open or closed. Instead, she asks the first person, "Why do you want the window open?" "To get some fresh air," he says. She turns to the other. "And why do you want it closed?" "To avoid the draft," he replies. After a moment of thought, she walks into the next room and opens a window wide. Fresh air comes in, without a draft. A simple story, isn't it? But within that simple exchange lies one of the most powerful secrets to human interaction ever discovered. It's a secret that has diffused international crises, settled multi-billion-dollar lawsuits, and saved countless relationships. Today, we're going to explore that secret. We're diving into a book that isn't just a book, it's a revolution in how we think about getting what we want. It's called Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In. Born out of the brilliant minds at the Harvard Negotiation Project, this work by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton has sold millions of copies and has become the definitive guide for anyone who has to deal with other human beings. And let's be honest, that's all of us. Whether you're asking for a raise, deciding with your partner where to go for dinner, or trying to get your parents to extend your curfew, you're a negotiator. It's a fundamental part of life. But most of us do it poorly. We see only two ways to go about it. We can be soft, avoiding conflict, making concessions to preserve the relationship, but often ending up feeling exploited and bitter. Or we can be hard, treating it as a battle of wills, digging into our positions, and fighting for victory, but often exhausting ourselves and damaging the relationship beyond repair. It feels like a terrible choice, doesn't it? To get what you want, you have to be a jerk. To get along with people, you have to give in. But what if that choice is a false one? What if there's a third way? A way that is neither hard nor soft, but both. A way to be firm on what matters, but gentle with the people involved. A way to solve the problem together, instead of attacking each other. That is the promise of this book. And by the end of our time together, you'll understand this third way. You'll have a roadmap, a framework for turning any disagreement, big or small, into an opportunity for a wise and fair solution. This isn't just about winning an argument. It's about learning to win at the game of life itself. So, let's begin. The Great Trap: Why We Fight Over Positions. To understand the genius of getting to yes, we first have to understand the problem it solves. The authors give it a name: positional bargaining. It's the most common form of negotiation on the planet. It's what you see in movies, what you hear in political debates, and what we all tend to do instinctively. It goes like this: each side takes a position, argues for it, and then makes small concessions until they meet somewhere in the middle. Think of haggling in a second-hand store. The shopkeeper says, "This beautiful antique is $75. You, the customer, reply, "It's dented. I'll give you $15. And so the dance begins. He comes down to $60. You go up to $25. Maybe you meet at $40, maybe you walk away. That's positional bargaining. On the surface, it seems to work. It tells the other side what you want. But the authors at Harvard looked closer and realized that this method is deeply, fundamentally flawed. And it fails on three critical levels. First, It produces unwise agreements. When we bargain over positions, our egos get tangled up in them. The more we defend our position, the more committed we become. We're no longer just trying to solve a problem, we're trying to save face. Our focus shifts from our underlying needs to winning the point. The authors share a powerful, real-world example of this. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were negotiating a ban on nuclear testing. A critical question came up: how many on-site inspections should each country be allowed in the other's territory each year? The Soviets agreed to 3. The U.S. insisted on 10. And on that single point, the talks broke down. Over positions. 3 versus 10. No one had even figured out what an inspection really meant. Would it be 1 person for a day, or 100 people for a month? They were so locked into their numbers that they failed to explore the real interest underneath: verification for the U.S., and minimal intrusion for the Soviets. The result? No agreement, and the world remained a more dangerous place. That's the cost of an unwise agreement. Second, positional bargaining is incredibly inefficient. The process itself encourages stubbornness. You start with an extreme position, you dig in, you make tiny concessions only when you have to. It takes a huge amount of time and effort just to find out if an agreement is even possible. It's a slow, painful dance of offers and rejections, threats and bluffs. It's exhausting. And third, and perhaps most importantly, positional bargaining endangers the relationship. It frames the negotiation as a contest of will. I'm not giving in. It's my way or the highway. Each side tries to force the other to change its position through sheer willpower. This naturally leads to anger and resentment. One side feels like it's bending to the rigid will of the other, and its own legitimate concerns are being ignored. Friendships can be shattered, business partnerships dissolved, and families torn apart. The bitter feelings can last a lifetime. Now, some people recognize this. They see the high cost of playing hardball, so they decide to play soft. They want to avoid conflict, so they make concessions readily. They see the other side as friends, and their goal is simply to reach an agreement. This is often how we negotiate within families or with close friends. And it is efficient, in a way. An agreement is highly likely, and it comes quickly. But is it a wise one? The authors tell the classic O. Henry story of the husband who sells his watch to buy beautiful combs for his wife's hair, while his wife sells her hair to buy a chain for his watch. A loving outcome, born of concessions, that serves neither of their real interests. Worse, playing the soft game makes you incredibly vulnerable to someone playing a hard game. If they make demands and you make concessions, the game is biased in their favor. You will almost always lose your shirt. So here we stand, at this crossroads. Hard positional bargaining damages the relationship and often leads to a stalemate. Soft positional bargaining avoids conflict but leaves you open to being taken advantage of. It feels like an impossible choice. But the team at Harvard tells us, you don't have to choose. You can change the game. The third way, principled negotiation. The alternative to this lose-lose dilemma is what the authors call principled negotiation, or negotiation on the merits. It's a method designed to produce wise outcomes, efficiently and amicably. It can be boiled down to 4 fundamental principles. And if you remember nothing else from our time together, remember these 4 points. They are the pillars of a new way of thinking. 1. Separate the people from the problem. 2. Focus on interests, not positions. 3. Invent options for mutual gain. 4. Insist on using objective criteria. Let's walk through each of these together. Because this is where the magic happens. Principle 1. Separate the people from the problem. This is the bedrock. The authors remind us of a basic fact that's easy to forget, especially in big corporate or international deals. You are not dealing with abstract representatives of the other side. You are dealing with human beings. They have emotions, deeply held values, different backgrounds, and viewpoints. They are unpredictable. And so are you. This human element can be a disaster for a negotiation. We get angry, fearful, or offended. Our egos get threatened. We confuse our perceptions with reality. And we tend to entangle the relationship with the substance of the problem. A statement like, "The kitchen is a mess," can be intended simply to identify a problem, but it's often heard as a personal attack. Positional bargaining makes this so much worse. If I take a firm position, you see it as a statement of how little I care about our relationship. The people and the problem become one. The solution? We must learn to untangle them. Deal with the people problems directly, without making concessions on the substance. The authors suggest we think about people problems in 3 categories: perception, emotion, and communication. First, perception. It's a crucial insight. The conflict doesn't lie in objective reality, but in people's heads. Their thinking is the problem. It's not enough to know they see things differently. You need to understand, empathetically, the power of their point of view. You need to put yourself in their shoes. The book gives a brilliant example of the contrasting perceptions of a tenant and a landlady negotiating a lease. The tenant sees the rent as already too high, the apartment needing paint, and the landlady as cold and distant. The landlady sees the rent as having not been increased in years, the apartment as having suffered heavy wear and tear, and herself as a considerate person who never intrudes. Both of their perceptions are their realities. You can't get anywhere by arguing about whose reality is right. Instead, you discuss each other's perceptions. Make them explicit. Talk about them without blame. And one of the most powerful things you can do to change their perception is to act inconsistently with what they expect. The authors point to Egyptian President Anwar Sadat's historic visit to Jerusalem in 1977. The Israelis saw him as an enemy who had launched a surprise attack just 4 years earlier. To change that perception, Sadat flew to the capital of his enemies. He acted not as an enemy, but as a partner. That single, dramatic move made the peace treaty that followed possible. Next, emotion. Especially in a bitter dispute, feelings can be more important than talk. Emotions on one side generate emotions on the other. Fear breeds anger, and anger breeds fear. The first step is simply to recognize the emotions, theirs and yours. Are you nervous? Are they angry? What is producing these feelings? Don't ignore them. Make the emotions explicit and acknowledge them as legitimate. It's okay to say, "You know, the people on our side feel we've been mistreated and are very upset. That's a real concern for us." Talking about feelings doesn't make you weak, it makes the negotiation less reactive and more proactive. And sometimes, you just need to allow the other side to let off steam. Don't interrupt their angry speeches. Don't walk out. Sit there, listen, and let them pour out their grievances. People get a psychological release from simply recounting their troubles. Once the unexpressed emotions are gone, they'll be more likely to work on the problem. Finally, there's communication. The authors identify 3 big problems here. First, negotiators may not actually be talking to each other. They're just playing to the gallery, trying to impress their own constituents. Second, even if you are talking to them, they may not be hearing you. They're so busy thinking about what they're going to say next that they forget to listen. And third, even if they are listening, they may be misunderstanding you. The cure for this is active listening. Pay close attention to what is said. Ask them to spell things out. Request that they repeat ideas if there's any uncertainty. And the cheapest concession you can make to the other side, the authors say, is to let them know they have been heard. You don't have to agree with them. But you must be able to say, "Let me see if I follow what you're telling me. From your point of view, the situation looks like this." And when you can state their case back to them, even better than they can, you disarm them completely. They can no longer believe you've misunderstood them. Only then will they be open to hearing your point of view. So, the first principle is to see yourselves not as adversaries facing each other, but as partners, sitting side by side, facing a common problem. Attack the problem, not the people. Principle 2. Focus on interests, not positions. This brings us back to the library. The two men had positions, window open and window closed, but their interests were fresh air and no draft. The librarian's solution worked because she ignored their stated positions and focused on their underlying interests. This is the core of the entire method. The basic problem in a negotiation lies not in conflicting positions, but in the conflict between each side's needs, desires, concerns, and fears. Your position is what you've decided on. Your interests are what caused you to decide. The book gives another monumental example of this principle in action: the 1978 Camp David peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. For years, they had been locked in a bitter conflict over the Sinai Peninsula, which Israel had occupied since 1967. Their positions were incompatible. Israel insisted on keeping part of the Sinai. Egypt insisted that every inch be returned to Egyptian sovereignty. They drew map after map, trying to find a line to divide the land, but it was hopeless. The breakthrough came when they looked beyond positions to interests. Israel's underlying interest wasn't owning the land. It was security. They didn't want Egyptian tanks poised on their border, ready to attack. Egypt's interest wasn't just about territory, it was about sovereignty. The Sinai had been part of Egypt since the time of the pharaohs, and they would not cede it to another foreign conqueror. Once these interests were understood, a solution became possible. They devised a brilliant plan that returned the Sinai to complete Egyptian sovereignty, but demilitarized large areas, ensuring Israeli security. The Egyptian flag would fly everywhere, but Egyptian tanks would be nowhere near Israel. They had reconciled their interests, not their positions. This works for two reasons. First, for every interest, there are usually several possible positions that could satisfy it. And second, behind opposed positions lie many more interests than just the conflicting ones. There are shared interests and compatible interests. A tenant and a landlord might have opposing positions on the price of rent, but they share an interest in stability. The landlord wants a good tenant, the tenant wants a permanent address. They share an interest in maintaining the apartment. They share an interest in a good relationship. When you start to see all the shared and compatible interests, the single conflicting one seems much more manageable. So, how do you identify interests? The authors give us two simple but powerful techniques. First, ask why. For every position they take, ask yourself why. Why does your boss want the report done by Tuesday? Is it because his boss needs it then? Or is he just trying to look efficient? You can also ask them directly, what's your basic concern in wanting it done by Tuesday? Second, ask why not. Think about the choice they see. Why haven't they already made the decision you want them to make? What interests of theirs stand in the way? The book provides a fascinating balance sheet analysis of the choice facing an Iranian student leader during the 1980 hostage crisis. On one side of the ledger were all the reasons to say yes to releasing the hostages, and on the other, all the reasons to say no. Looking at it from his perspective, it becomes clear why holding on to the hostages, as terrible as it was, seemed like a rational choice for him at the time. To change his mind, you have to change the balance sheet. And remember, the most powerful interests of all are basic human needs: security, economic well-being, a sense of belonging, recognition, and control over one's life. If you can address these fundamental needs, you dramatically increase your chances of reaching a durable agreement. Principle 3. Invent options for mutual gain. So you've separated the people from the problem, and you're focused on interests. But what if there just doesn't seem to be a way to split the pie that leaves both sides happy? This is where the third principle comes in: creativity. The authors tell another classic story of two children who quarreled over an orange. They finally agreed to divide it in half. The first child took her half, ate the fruit, and threw away the peel. The other child took his half, threw away the fruit, and used the peel to bake a cake. They had settled for half an orange each, when they could have had the whole fruit for one and the whole peel for the other. They left value on the table. This happens all the time. We get so focused on our own position that we fail to see creative solutions that could benefit everyone. The authors say there are 4 major obstacles that block creative thinking in a negotiation. 1. Premature judgment. We have a critical voice in our head that immediately shoots down any new idea. 2. Searching for the single answer. We think our job is to narrow the gap, not broaden the options. 3. The assumption of a fixed pie. We see it as an either/or situation. The less for you, the more for me. 4. Thinking that solving their problem is their problem. We are so focused on our own needs that we don't think about developing solutions that also appeal to the other side's self-interest. To overcome these obstacles, we need a different approach. The first step is to separate the act of inventing options from the act of judging them. In other words, invent first, decide later. The best way to do this is with a brainstorming session. Get a few colleagues or friends together, and set one key ground rule: postpone all criticism and evaluation. The goal is to produce as many ideas as possible, no matter how wild. Wild ideas are encouraged because they can spark other, more realistic ones. You can even brainstorm with the other side. It's riskier, but it has huge advantages. It produces ideas that already take their interests into account, and it creates a climate of joint problem solving. Once you've opened up the creative space, you need ways to generate options. The authors introduce a wonderful tool called the circle chart. It involves 4 steps. 1. Step I problem. What's wrong? What are the current symptoms? For example, a polluted river runs by my land. 2. Step 2 analysis. Diagnose the problem. Sort it into categories. Suggest causes. For example, high chemical content, probably from upstream factories. 3. Step 3 approaches. What are some possible strategies or cures? For example, reduce chemical discharge, bring in fresh water. 4. Step 4 action ideas. What specific steps might be taken? For example, the state environmental agency could order the factory to limit its discharge. This chart helps you move from a specific problem to general analysis, then to general solutions, and finally back to specific, practical actions. Another powerful technique is to look for mutual gain. Stressing your shared interests can make the negotiations smoother and more amicable. And beyond shared interests, you can dovetail differing interests. This is a profound insight. We usually assume that differences create the problem. But differences can also lead to the solution. A buyer of stock believes the price will go up, the seller believes it will go down. That difference in belief is what makes a deal possible. Jack Sprat could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean. Their differing interests allowed them to lick the platter clean. Look for differences in interests, in beliefs, in the value placed on time, in forecasts, and in aversion to risk. These are the building blocks of creative agreements. Finally, a crucial part of inventing options is to make their decision easy. Success for you depends on them making a decision you want. So, confront them with a choice that is as painless as possible. Don't give them a problem. Give them an answer. Think about what a yesable proposition would look like from their point of view. Draft it. Refine it. Make it easy for them to say yes. Principle 4. Insist on using objective criteria. This is the final pillar, and it's what protects you from being bullied by a contest of will. No matter how well you understand their interests or how creative you are, you will almost always face some conflicting interests. You want the rent lower, the landlord wants it higher. How do you resolve this without just giving in to pressure? The answer is to negotiate on a basis that is independent of the will of either side. That is, on the basis of objective criteria. Imagine you're having a house built. The contract calls for reinforced concrete foundations but doesn't specify how deep. The contractor suggests 2 feet. You think 5 feet is more appropriate. He says, I went along with you on the steel roof girders. It's your turn to go along with me on the foundations. No sane person would yield. You wouldn't horse trade on safety. You would say, look, what I want are foundations strong enough to hold up the building. What are the government's standard specifications for this soil? How deep are the foundations of other buildings in this area? You would insist on objective safety standards. Why not do the same in every negotiation? Instead of haggling over a price, why not insist that the price be based on some standard like market value, replacement cost, or competitive prices? The approach is to commit yourself to reaching a solution based on principle, not pressure. Be open to reason, but closed to threats. This has enormous advantages. First, it produces wise and fair agreements. An agreement consistent with precedent is less vulnerable to attack. Second, it protects the relationship. It's far easier to deal with people when you are both discussing objective standards instead of trying to force each other to back down. And third, it's far more efficient. You spend your time talking about possible standards and solutions, not defending and attacking arbitrary positions. The Law of the Sea Conference provides a fantastic example. At one point, India proposed a $60 million initial fee for companies mining the deep seabed. The United States proposed no fee. They were deadlocked. Then, someone discovered that MIT had developed an economic model of deep seabed mining. This model was gradually accepted by both sides as objective. When India saw how its proposal would make mining economically impossible, they reconsidered. When the U.S. saw that some fee was feasible, they also changed their position. No one backed down. No one appeared weak. They just appeared reasonable. They deferred to a fair standard. So, how do you use objective criteria? There are 3 basic steps. 1. Frame each issue as a joint search for objective criteria. Say, look, you want a high price and I want a low one. Let's figure out what a fair price would be. What objective standards might be relevant? 2. Reason and be open to reason. This is not about finding arguments to support your position. It's about being genuinely open to persuasion on the merits. Behave like a judge. While you may be predisposed to your own side, you must be willing to respond to reasons for applying another standard or for applying a standard differently. 3. Never yield to pressure, only to principle. If the contractor threatens to charge you a higher price for the house unless you agree to the 2-foot foundations, your answer is, we'll settle the price on its merits too. Let's see what other contractors charge. If they say, come on, don't you trust me? Your answer is, trust is a separate matter. The issue is how deep the foundations need to be to make the house safe. Pressure can take many forms: a bribe, a threat, a manipulative appeal to trust, or a simple refusal to budge. The principled response is always the same. Invite them to state their reasoning, suggest objective criteria you think apply, and refuse to budge except on this basis. Yes, but The tough questions. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, this all sounds great in a perfect world. But what if the other side is more powerful? What if they won't play this game? What if they use dirty tricks? These are the real-world questions, and the authors dedicate the final part of the book to answering them. This is where the theory gets road-tested. First, what if they are more powerful? The authors are realists. They state clearly that no method can guarantee success if all the leverage is on the other side. But what any good method can do is meet two objectives. First, protect you against making an agreement you should reject, and second, help you make the most of the assets you do have. To protect yourself, people often rely on a bottom line, the worst acceptable outcome. For a seller, it's the lowest price they'll accept. The problem with a bottom line is that it's rigid. It makes you decide in advance that nothing the other side says could cause you to change your mind. It shuts your ears and inhibits your imagination. The solution is to know your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. This is the single most important concept in the entire book for protecting yourself. Before you ever walk into a negotiation, you must have a clear answer to the question, what will I do if we fail to reach an agreement? The BATNA is the standard against which any proposed agreement should be measured. Is the offer on the table better or worse than your BATNA? If it's better, you should consider taking it. If it's worse, you should walk away. The power of the BATNA is that it gives you a real-world alternative. It's not an arbitrary number you picked out of the air. It's your plan B. And the better your BATNA, the greater your power. The authors use the example of a wealthy tourist trying to buy a brass pot from a poor vendor in Bombay. The tourist may be powerful in terms of wealth, but in this negotiation, he is weak unless he knows how much a comparable pot would cost elsewhere. The vendor, though poor, knows the market. He knows what he can sell the pot for to another tourist. His BATNA is strong. The tourist's is weak. Relative negotiating power has nothing to do with wealth. It depends entirely on how attractive to each side is the option of not reaching an agreement. So, the key is to develop your BATNA. Brainstorm a list of actions you could take if no agreement is reached. Improve the most promising ideas and turn them into practical, real alternatives. And finally, tentatively select the one that seems best. Knowing what you'll do if you walk away gives you the confidence to negotiate on the merits. Second, what if they won't play? What if you try to discuss interests, and they just state their position? You try to invent options, and they just attack your ideas? You try to focus on the merits, and they attack you? The authors offer a brilliant strategy they call negotiation jujitsu. Just like in the martial arts, you don't meet their force with your force. You don't push back. If you do, you'll end up playing their positional bargaining game. Instead, you sidestep their attack and deflect it against the problem. How does this work? Their attack will usually consist of 3 moves: asserting their position, attacking your ideas, and attacking you. When they assert their position, don't reject it. Look behind it. Treat it as one possible option. Ask them about the interests and principles behind it. Why do you feel that's a fair price? What's the theory behind it? When they attack your ideas, don't defend them. Invite criticism and advice. Ask them what's wrong with your proposal. What concerns of yours would this idea fail to take into account? Turn the situation around and ask for their advice. If you were in my shoes, how would you handle this? This forces them to confront your side of the problem. And when they attack you personally, don't counterattack. Recast their attack on you as an attack on the problem. When you say that we don't care about the children's education, I hear your concern for the children. We share that concern. What can we both do now to reach an agreement as quickly as possible? The 2 key tools of negotiation jujitsu are using questions instead of statements, and using silence. Questions generate answers. Statements generate resistance. And silence. Silence is one of your best weapons. After you've asked an honest question, or after they've made an unreasonable proposal, just wait. People feel uncomfortable with silence. They will often feel compelled to break it by answering your question or offering a new suggestion. And third, what if they use dirty tricks? What if they lie, or use psychological abuse, or other forms of pressure tactics? The authors call this tricky bargaining. Most people respond in one of two ways. They put up with it, or they respond in kind. Both are mistakes. The answer is to negotiate about the rules of the game itself, using the very same principles of principled negotiation. The process has 3 steps. 1. Recognize the tactic. Know what's going on. Is it deliberate deception, like phony facts? Is it psychological warfare, like a good guy/bad guy routine? Is it positional pressure, like a take-it-or-leave-it ultimatum? Often, just recognizing the tactic is enough to neutralize it. 2. Raise the issue explicitly. Bring it up. Say, I may be mistaken, but it feels like you two are playing a good guy/bad guy routine. If you need a moment to sort out your differences, feel free to take a recess. Discussing the tactic makes it less effective. 3. Question the tactic's legitimacy and desirability. This is where you negotiate about the process. Separate the people from the tactic. Don't attack their integrity, question the tactic itself. I'm finding the sun in my eyes quite distracting. Unless we can solve that, I may have to leave early. Shall we find another spot? Insist on principles, especially the principle of reciprocity. Shall we alternate spilling coffee on each other day by day? The message is clear. You don't have to be a victim. It is easier to defend principle than it is to defend an illegitimate tactic. Be just as firm as they are, but be firm on the merits. Commentary: The art of getting along and getting what you deserve. So, what do we take away from all this? For me, the single most powerful idea in getting to yes is that it reframes the entire purpose of negotiation. It's not about winning or losing. It's not a battle. It's a process of joint problem solving. The question isn't, who's winning? The question is, are we working together to find the wisest possible solution for both of us? To ask who's winning a negotiation is as inappropriate as asking who's winning a marriage. If you're asking that question, you've already lost the more important negotiation, the one about what kind of relationship you want to have. This book is about how to win that game. It gives us a way to be both effective and decent. It shows us that we don't have to choose between getting what we deserve and being the kind of person we want to be. We can have both. Its power lies in its deep understanding of human nature, our egos, our fears, our need for recognition, and in providing concrete, actionable tools to navigate that complex terrain. It's not a collection of clever tricks. It's a philosophy, a mindset, a better way to deal with our differences. And its principles are universal. They apply whether you are a world leader at a peace summit or a teenager asking for the keys to the car. So, how can you start applying these ideas today without taking too much risk? Here are 3 simple things you can do. First, the next time you find yourself in any kind of disagreement, no matter how small, just pause for a second. And ask yourself 2 silent questions. What is my real, underlying interest here? And what might their real interest be? Just asking that question, just shifting your focus from positions to interests, will change the entire dynamic of the conversation. Second, think about one upcoming negotiation in your life. Maybe it's about a summer job, or a project with a classmate. Before you have that conversation, take 5 minutes and think about your BATNA. What will you do if you can't reach an agreement? What is your best alternative? You don't even have to tell them what it is. Just knowing it yourself will give you a quiet confidence that will change how you carry yourself. And third, try inviting criticism. The next time you propose an idea, instead of defending it, try saying, "I'm sure this isn't perfect. What might be wrong with this approach?" You will be amazed at how it disarms people. It turns them from adversaries into collaborators. It invites them to help you build a better solution. Getting to Yes is more than just a book about negotiation. It's a guide to more effective, more humane, and ultimately more successful human interaction. It gives us a language and a framework for turning conflict into cooperation. And in a world filled with so much division, that is a lesson we all need to learn. That was a summary of Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton. We've certainly hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real magic happens when you walk the territory yourself. It's in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase from the authors hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time and attention. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly hope you'll grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning techniques, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your relationships and the world around you. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning, and let's keep growing, together.